Hello, and thank you for checking Short Points, where we are sharing thoughts on the Sabbath School lessons. For those of you that are following our journey for a bit longer, welcome to a new quarter.
And last week we have finished a whole quarter talking about the great controversy. And if you think about it, in the center of this controversy is the Son of God, Jesus Christ. Who is He? How did He choose to present Himself to us? And what did He accomplish? This is what Matthew, Jesus' disciple and a Jewish tax collector, decided to address in his letter to his fellow Jews and also to us.
We will be studying the book of Matthew. So when you glance through the intro and the content of the lesson, what are your first impressions?
Dr. Andy Nash, the author of our lesson, tells us a story in his introduction that leads us to one conclusion. How much paralyzed are we by the effects of sin? And much worse is that internally we have no power to make any difference in our life. His opinion is that the power should come from outside. Is that so? Where should I look for this power?
The story in the intro about Rick Hoyt sets a very important context. In God, we all have this "my dad is the father of the century" experience, even more than that, but words are insufficient to describe what God is bringing to our life. Like deliverance, meaning, empowerment, everything that we are longing for. The promised Messiah.
And definitely Matthew has experienced some extraordinary moments when being with Jesus. He wanted to make them known primarily to his fellow Jews in his time. What he had to say was, "I have found the one who has the power to change my life." And dear fellows, he is the promised Messiah.
All the Gospels basically tell the same story. But the way that we are going to be looking at Matthew is through this lens. Jesus is the one that can do for us what we can never do for ourselves. He is the one. Okay, and the first lesson is labeled the Son of David. And the book of Matthew basically starts with a genealogy.
And Matthew was one of those who met, slept, ate, walked with Jesus, and saw him crucified. He had his own personal motive on how to reveal and describe everything he saw and learned from the teacher, following him for 3.5 years. He was a tax collector. He was from Capernaum, from the province of Galilee. But who was Jesus and what was his origin?
The thoughts of the author regarding the first sentence of the book of Matthew: this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ. And the word genealogy as book of Genesis, this is the book of Genesis of Jesus Christ, brings an interesting flavor. The New Testament starts with the genesis of our salvation.
Matthew was an educated man, mathematically savvy, logical tax collector. He was a proactive person by nature. He would get what he wants. Not easily affected anymore by peer pressure too. These qualities drove his interest in digging out who were really Jesus' ancestors. And his work, his research and discoveries prove a couple of points that are presented in this lesson.
While John's attention, for example, at the beginning of his gospel is to talk about the divinity of Jesus, Matthew focuses on his humanity.
And sometimes we do everything possible to prove and explain what we have experienced in our life. After seeing Jesus ascending into heaven, Matthew will make an effort to explain how did he experience Jesus by revising everything that he learned from him. And of course, he brings his point of view. He brings the arguments that speak to his mind and to his heart. And the first point that we find in the lesson is that Jesus is the Messiah, and his relation to Abraham and King David is in the record.
It was important for the Jewish expectations that the Messiah will descend from King David. By accenting on Jesus being the son of David, Matthew is making a very big statement. Yes, for the Jews, but it's also bigger than that, because as it starts at the end of the New Testament as well, in the last chapter, the last book, in the epilogue, in verse 16, Jesus identifies himself as, "I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright, more shining morning star." The New Testament starts and ends with this. Jesus, the Son of David. What a connection between God and humanity.
And greatness is in the Bible is not masked by any false perfectness, and thanks God for that. Matthew is cold-blooded when he lists the names in Jesus' genealogy like Tamara, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, names that carry a questionable reputation and contradictory nature of their character. But all this shows how God is capable of working with us as we are. We have our own place in His intentions, and it's our choice how we want to live the opportunities and the blessings in our life.
There are some very weird stories and personalities in the genealogy of Jesus. And then all these wicked fathers and kings that once in a while will be inherited by good sons and kings just to be succeeded by other wicked kings. There is no pattern of righteousness in the lineage of Jesus, as we read in Zondervan's Illustrated Bible Backgrounds Commentary of Matthew. And the author points out that neither we, as individuals or as church, should have any such pretensions. God works with us, and this is what makes the difference.
You're absolutely right, Nick. The last point that the lesson makes following Matthew's line of thoughts is the unexpected rejection the Messiah gets from his own prominent people. Those who knew about him, those who were commissioned to tell about him, were those who opposed him and rejected him. Honest scientists, three magi, followed the star and followed the good news. So who am I when considering those two groups, the priests and King Herod and the three magi?
Could even Jesus be perceived as a danger for the church? This will be sad. Join us again next week when the ministry begins.